Can you hear me okay then? Yeah. Good afternoon everybody and welcome to this afternoon's Planning and Environmental Protection Committee. A little bit of housekeeping rules for members of the public etc. who are here. The facilities are down near the reception area. If there's a fire then please make your way out of the nearest exit, and the assembly point is near the car park towards the front of the building. Okay, if you are intending to speak or called to speak, can you please make sure, or it's up to you, to use the wipes that are by the mic at the front, to use them before you speak. Okay. First item then is apologies for absence, please.
Thank you, Chair. We've had apologies from Councillor Brown and Councillor Rush as attending a substitute.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor Rush, for standing in. Item 2 is declarations of interest. None of those. Okay. Item 3 is declaration to make representation as a ward councillor. None of those. Item 4 then is development control and enforcement matters. Item 4.1 relates to the property 40 Westwood Park Road, Peterborough, and will be presented this afternoon by Louise when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. The application before you seeks planning permission for the construction of various extensions to the property of 40 Westwood Park Road. These extensions include alterations to the principal elevation to create an enclosed porch, removal of an existing garage and summer room, and replacement with a ground and first floor rear extension, and a loft conversion. Members may recall that an application similar to this was refused some months ago in October 2021 by the committee for a similar scheme. This was refused as it was considered that the proposed single-storey rear extension would have resulted in an unacceptably overbearing impact to the amenities of occupants of number 42 Westwood Park Road next door. The proposal has been amended by the applicant in an attempt to address this reason for refusal. Next slide, please, Dan. This slide shows the application site edged in red. The site lies on the western side of Westwood Park Road and comprises detached two-storey front gabled property set back from the highway with a gravelled area to the front. The street scene is formed by large detached dwellings set within spacious plots and all of differing design, form and architectural style. Many have been remodelled and altered. Next slide. And this slide shows the extent of the existing ground floor of the property, which comprises a modest dwelling with large detached garage along the boundary with number 38 Westwood Park Road to the south. Next slide, please. And here is the modest sized existing first floor. Next slide, please. These are the existing elevations of the property showing its current traditional and proportional form and appearance. Next slide, please. Turning to the photographs of the site, this shows the view of the street scene looking south from the north. The application property is in the centre of the photograph, with red brick to the ground floor and render to the first floor. Next slide, please. And here is the principal elevation of the property. Next one, please. Turning to the rear elevation, this photograph shows the application site as existing in relation to its immediate neighbours, number 38 to the south and number 42 to the north, and these are annotated on the photograph for you. Next slide, please, Dan. This photograph shows more clearly the relationship between the application site and number 42, which itself has been extended by virtue of a two-storey side extension along the shared boundary and a single-storey rear extension. Next slide, please. And this shows the relationship to number 38, which has been extended by virtue of a conservatory to the rear. Next slide, please. Thank you. This is the rear garden of the site looking to the west. Members may recall that this site previously had lots of trees on it, but prior to submission of the first application, those trees were cleared. No planning permission was required for the removal of those. Next slide, please. These photographs show the extent of development along the shared boundary of the application site with number 42. And the next one, thank you. And this shows similar with regards to the boundary with number 38. The proposal is largely the same as the previously refused scheme, with the exception of one fundamental amendment to the single-storey rear extension. This has been scaled back in proximity to the shared boundary with number 42 Westwood Park Road, and members will note the cut-off of the corner there, which doglegs the extension to the rear. The extension on the boundary would extend to a depth of 975 millimetres beyond the rear elevation of number 42. It would then dogleg to a larger rear projection of 4.5 metres, but this would be set at a distance of 3.4 metres from the shared boundary with the neighbour. The height remains as existing. Next slide, please, Dan. The first floor rear extension, as shown here, would remain the same as the earlier refuse scheme, albeit the first floor element did not form part of the reason for refusal. Next slide, please. So too, the loft conversion would remain as per the previous application, which again was not resisted by members. The overall design approach to the proposal would remain the same as the earlier refuse scheme, with the ground floor rear extension being a flat roof construction. And here, this shows the relationship with the existing and the proposed block plans overlaid. The footprint of the existing garage and summer room is shown in blue, with the extension shown in grey. As with the earlier scheme, the previous similar application was refused for only one reason for refusal: neighbour amenity towards 42 Westwood Park Road. As such, members must remember that it's considered that you found the scheme acceptable in all other regards, and therefore to revisit these at this stage could leave the local authority open to award of costs should you choose to introduce new reasons for refusal now. Therefore, we consider that the only matter that we can now consider is whether the applicant has addressed the previous reason for refusal. Officers are of the view that the proposal has been amended sufficiently to reduce the impact to within acceptable tolerances, and the amendments that have been submitted by the applicant are in line with the recommendation of officers as part of the first application. While still close to the boundary with 40 Westwood Park Road, the proposal would now only project 975mm beyond the rear elevation, which is not considered to result in an unacceptable degree of overbearing impact. Whilst the concerns of this neighbour are noted, officers believe that the relationship is acceptable and that the scheme can be permitted. In light of this, our recommendation to you is that today the application should be approved, subject to the conditions set out within the main committee report. There are no updates or amendments to that committee report. Thank you, Chair.
Yes, Councillor Rush. Yeah.
Yes, Councillor Rush, it should be. Yes, that's an error on the OS plan. Yeah.
Okay, fine. Thank you. Thank you, Louise. Okay, we have 3 people registered to speak. Firstly, I'll call Councillor Jamil, please, as the... What's your point of order, sir? He's the ward councillor. He's very eligible to speak. Well, Councillor Iqbal is not on. Councillor Jamil is not on the committee. He's addressing us as ward councillor, and he has to represent the people he feels he wants to represent. Okay. Well, I'll ask the legal officer on this, Chris. Your. What do you think, Chris? The legal officer says it's okay to speak. So, Councillor Jamil, please. Councillor Jamil, welcome. You know the procedure. You'll have 10 minutes when you're ready to address the committee.
Thank you very much, Chair. And thank you for affording me the opportunity to speak here. As you will all know from the comments made by Planning Officer, that this is a second application, whereas the previous one was refused. And I'm here because I feel now that the scheme before us is acceptable for approval. Previously I had issues with it, and therefore I did not attend on that occasion, but I'm here today in support of our officer's recommendations. I just feel that a lot of has gone on in this application, to the extent that I think officers at first on the previous application recommended its approval, and then all of a sudden then we looked at it, and then they changed their minds, which they're entitled to do so. But I just feel that now we've scaled back to such an extent where it's now, I think it's an attractive, it will be an attractive piece when it's finished, and it will be as such where it actually will be acceptable to ourselves as a committee. We've got to, I believe that, you know, if you look at the case history on this, is that once it was refused, Mr. Imran has gone back to planning officers with his architect, and mails were exchanged, drawings were exchanged, and now we've come up with the one thing that was a stumbling block last time, and I believe that that one point is now being addressed, and I feel that we can actually go ahead with regards to the application today. Now, I've looked through some of the objections that were being raised, and I know that one of them is that the neighbours have, or the objections are that it may, as Mr. Imran is referred to as a property developer, he may turn the property into a HMO or somewhere where there may be more than the one family living there. But I've been asked by Mr. Imran to assure the committee that this is his home, or as he calls it, his home for life now, because the amount of money that he's paid for the house and the amount of money he will then end up spending, he's going to live there with his wife and children. And then he assures that there will be no other change of use from here. I do believe that the plans now are acceptable, and I therefore ask the committee to accept officer's recommendation and grant planning petition today. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Jamil. Members, have any questions, please? Thank you, Councillor Jamil. Okay, Mr. Perkins, please. Good afternoon, Mr. Perkins. Welcome to committee. You have 5 minutes when you're ready to address the committee.
Do I just have to press anything here?
Could you just, press the mic? I don't think I can see it's on.
Do I press one of these?
Oh, the other one's still on, that's why.
Oh, do I get that?
Yeah, or press that one, whichever way around.
Okay, thank you for the opportunity to speak today. Many of the objections I had to the previous rejected application still remain, and committee members will have read those in the report. As I said at the previous meeting and in correspondence, I'm not against the applicant developing, just asking for consultation and cooperation as a neighbour. Despite 2 requests, there's been no contact at all by anybody on his side. He's chosen confrontation, and that's why we're here today, I'm afraid. The ground floor extension remains, as before, a major objection. It's forward of my ground floor extension by almost a metre. Again, I question why this is still agreeable to planners and LP 17 of the local plan. Projecting a metre forward does impact on my amenity as a neighbour. Height and proximity of the ground floor extension. Under the previous rejected application, it was 3.2 metres high. Now it's 3.3 metres high. The boundary fence is 1.8 metres high, and my ground floor extension is 23 centimetres from that boundary fence. Then it's another 31 centimetres, and then another 1.5 metres above that. That's his extension. Is that not overbearing? Would committee members be happy to live with that next door? I suspect not. This ground floor extension is overbearing by virtue of its height, scale and proximity to my immediate outdoor amenity area and main indoor living space. Plus, it affects light to my windows and roof lights at that end. Mrs. Montgomery and her colleague viewed the back of my property last September, and I did the same demonstration with her then. Planners now state that, quote, whilst the proposed ground floor extension would still be visible above the 1.8 metre fence, on balance this would not result in an unacceptable level of harm to warrant a refusal. Well, clearly I beg to differ on that. It's overbearing before, so it's overbearing now. At the rear, my ground floor extension is 2.4 metres high, and the planners state in the report that the current ground floor summer house at number 40 is 2.5 metres high. So why is a height of 3.3 metres high, it's a flat roof, acceptable for this ground floor extension? Then you have the roof lights on top, and we don't know how tall they're going to be. The ground floor summer house at number 40 is the precedent for this property, and that is at a height of 2.5 metres. That's how high any new ground floor extension should be, in my opinion. The issue here is that if you allow this 3.3 metre high extension to go ahead, you'll set a precedent down Western Port Scott Road. Everybody will want it, and then we'll have all sorts of problems there coming to committee. 3.3 metres high impacts on my family amenity and the use and enjoyment of my property, including the light amenity. As the sun comes round from east to west, it's not a problem for number 38 because it's to the south, but it is for number 42, which is north of number 40, as we've seen. Proximity, my concerns about proximity and building so close to my structural boundary wall remain. I'm not sure there's any surveyors on the committee here, but every surveyor I've spoken to said you don't build within a metre of a structural wall. So I'm sure Mr. Sharman will tell you that his client has been more than reasonable and addressed the issues raised by me during the previous application. But as I've just demonstrated and spoken, apart from the new cutback, issues of scale, size, height and proximity remain. Consequently, I urge the committee to reject the current application under the neighbour amenity provision of LP 17 by virtue of the siting, height, scale and proximity of the proposed development number 42, on the basis that it would present an unacceptably overbearing impact on our immediate outside area and main inside living area. This development would continue to affect the amenity of my family. Any ground floor extension should be no higher than 2.5 metres in my view. That's the precedent that's set for number 40 already with the summer house there. As I've mentioned before, to satisfy the neighbour amenity provision under policy LP 17, I believe that any new development at number 40 should be a metre away from the boundary, be level with the existing building line at first and ground floor with number 42, and any ground floor extension should be no higher than 2.5 metres. So I urge you to reject this application again today. And for the third time, I'm always willing to meet Mr. Sharman and his client to agree a way forward. They've rebuffed me on 2 occasions before that. That's a shame because I think we could have agreed a way forward, but he's chosen the confrontation route. So, and it should be noted that the applicant is not actually prepared to come up here and speak at this microphone either. That's my statement. Thank you.
Sorry, thank you, Mr. Perkins. Yeah, I've got my own mic then. Thank you. Okay, Mr. Sharman then, please. You were the right one. It was left on, so press it again. Yeah, at the bottom, yeah.
Can you hear that? Yeah,
Yes.
okay, good.
Welcome, Mr. Sharman. You have
Okay.
5 minutes to address committee.
Yeah, okay, it's a couple of minutes for me. Our previous application for this same project was refused by this committee on one point only, and that was that the single-storey extension would result in an unacceptably overbearing impact on number 42, and with specific reference to the immediate outdoor amenity area. That application, I must add, was originally supported by the planning department until at the last moment an about turn was made by the planning officer after receiving quite an amount of lobbying by the occupant and others, and convinced them and yourselves of the adverse impact this would have on the property, and a refusal was issued. There was always a risk of this occurring, and the refusal was duly accepted without thought of making an appeal to the planning inspectorate. Upon receipt of the refusal, we again sought the advice of the planning officer, as we had done on the previous scheme, asking what would be acceptable in planning terms and with specific reference to the refusal reasoning and the policy LP 17 of the local plan. In this case, we came to an agreement with the planner, and the outcome is the scheme you have before you today that now has a recommendation for approval, which I hope you will agree with. A point of note before I complete my speech: a permission was granted for the side and rear extension of number 42, which gives a projection in front of my client's sitting room of 8.25 metres, and that is only inches from our boundary. Surely this was wrong in the first place from a planning point of view, and is something the occupant of number 42 appears to have conveniently forgotten. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. No, it's not time for debate here. You're not no, just carry on with your point. Can you please keep it from actually going personal on it? Just keep to the facts for me, please.
I think Mr Perkins had his chance to speak, did he not?
Yeah, no, and you've got your chance now, so can you stick with doing it? Can you carry on?
I've finished, thank you very much. Yes, sorry about
I'll
that.
say carry on. I wanted to carry on.
Yeah, I've got no more to add.
Okay, questions then to Mr Sharman. No, none of those.
Lovely, thank you for your time.
Questions then to officers, or legal officer. Anybody got any? Sure. No, none at all. Oh, Councillor Rush.
Thank you, Chair. Mr Perkins said this is still contrary to planning policy LP 17, height, scale, size and proximity. Could you clarify that, if that is correct?
Thank you, Councillor Rush. The impact upon neighbour amenity is clearly dealt with within the main committee report, and officers are of the view that the proposal is in compliance with policy LP 17.
Any others? No? Okay, we'll go to debate then. Please, who would like to start debate on this one? Councillor Hiller, please.
Thank you, Chair. I remember well when this application first came to committee, Chair, and I personally had a great reservation about the massing and the overlooking and the amenity loss for Mr Perkins and his family with this extension in mind. That has been satisfied in my mind now, Chair. I think the applicant has taken the corner sufficiently away of this ground floor extension, and frankly I agree with our planning officer. I think this is a large extension. It's a reasonable size house with a ground floor extension that, looking at the plans, appears to work well from a family point of view. The idea of multi-occupancy, HMOs, I think have been bandied about. It's completely irrelevant in my mind. Whatever the assurance of the applicant, that isn't something I'm making any decisions on this afternoon. I feel that the alteration that's been made, in my mind, makes this application acceptable. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Hiller. Anybody else? Councillor Iqbal.
Thank you, Chair, and through you, I totally agree with Councillor Hiller's view. The only issue before us today is the neighbour immunity, and the applicant has went back and has cooperated with the officers. They've exchanged emails and they come to an agreement which was acceptable in terms of planning, and therefore I don't see any reason why we should have any further debate on this and just go for a vote and just support the officer's recommendation.
I will continue a debate. I understand where you're coming from, but it's a democratic way. Councillor Hogg.
I'll try and be brief. So as far as I'm concerned, I think I agree with my colleagues that have already spoken. Essentially, you know, as the applicant has said, that they could have taken this to appeal. They didn't take it to appeal. They listened to the comments that were made by the committee, and then engaged with the planning department to find an acceptable compromise. And I feel that that is exactly what they've done. And I'm more than happy to go with officer's recommendation to approve.
Thank you, Councillor Hogg. Anybody else? No. So, Councillor Hiller.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. I'm just picking up on what Councillor Hogg said. I'm not sure it's a compromise. I think Mr Perkins is still dead set against this, and I completely understand why. Well, if I could finish, I can understand why there is this antipathy. It appears to stem from a relationship breakdown between the neighbours. That's not what we're here to determine. It's not what we're here to discuss or decide. One thing I did pick up on, Chair, was from Mr Sharman's address, was that somehow he introduced the thought that lobbying had changed minds of planning officers and indeed committee members. Certainly in my case, I wasn't lobbied on the original application, and I had no change of heart with regard to any outside influence other than my own decision. Thank you, Chair.
No, and I would not expect anybody to have done that. Thank you. Anybody else? No. So then can I go to, have we got a proposal at all? Councillor, what is it, proposal?
Yes, Chair, and through you, I propose that we go with the officer's recommendation and approve the application today.
And the other seconder? Councillor Hussain is seconding. So all those in favour? Against? No and abstentions? Councillor Dowson.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, so that application is approved as per officer recommendation, 10-4 and 1 abstention.
Okay, thank you very much. The application is approved. Thank you. Are you ready to go straight away, or do you want a minute?
Yeah.
Sure? Yes. Okay. Moving then on to item 4.2. This one relates to 39 The Green, Warrington in Peterborough, and again will be presented by Louise when you're ready.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. This application at 39 The Green, Warrington seeks planning permission for the construction of a first floor side extension. Next slide, please, Dan. This slide shows the application site edged in red. The site lies within the urban area of the city on the northern side of the Green in Warrington. The site comprises of a 2-storey detached residential dwelling set in a backland position behind dwellings fronting onto the Green. There is a large area of hard-standing parking to the front with a generous private garden area to the rear. Next slide, please. This aerial photograph from 2020 shows the application site better in its context, edged in red. The site is situated entirely within the Warrington Conservation Area and is in close proximity to listed buildings which are indicated here shaded in red. To the east is the Grade 2 listed Manor House School, and to the immediate southeast is 41 The Green, which is also known as Thorney Lodge. To the south of the property is the Way Family Church, dating from 1835, and to the north the site is bound by gardens, residential gardens with open countryside beyond. To the west are residential dwellings off Cresta Drive. Next slide, please, Dan. Turning to the photographs of the site, this photograph shows the entire composition of the principal elevation. The dwelling has already been substantially extended in the past by way of a 2-storey side extension granted consent by members of the Planning Committee in 2012, and that's indicated there by the annotation. Next slide, please, Dan. This is the position of the proposed extension, which would be above the existing flat roof single-storey element and infill that section there. This slide shows the relationship of the application property and the proposed extension to the outbuildings serving 41 The Green, or Thorney Lodge, as some know it. And the next one, thanks. And here is the vehicular access to the site, which is shared with the Way Family Church, looking back towards the public highway of The Green. Panning round to the west, this shows the relationship of the site to the properties on Cresta Drive and the large parking area to the front of the site. And this photograph shows the view of the site from the public realm and the conservation area, with views of the dwelling possible between the frontage properties. While set back a relatively considerable distance from the public realm, the gap in the street scene is substantial enough to gain more than a glimpsed view of the application property and the proposed extension. This shows the view of the side elevation of the application property, which is clearly visible from the public realm. So turning to the proposal, the first floor extension would abut the shared boundary with number 41 The Green to the east and is shown here marked in red. The ground floor plan and layout of the existing property would remain unaltered, whilst the first floor would be extended above the existing flat roof element to the side and rear of the property. The extension would measure just shy of 3.4 metres in width and extend to a length of 10.6 metres. The front elevation of the proposal would be flush with the principal elevation of the main bulk of the dwelling, and the ridge height would be maintained as existing. The extension would not appear subservient to the main dwelling house, and this is the main issue that officers have. This shows the rear elevation of the property, with the design of the proposal resulting in a small gable projection. and here the side elevations as existing and proposed. The proposed eastern elevation to the top right hand corner would be the elevation visible from wider views from the conservation area to the east. With regards to public representations, one objection has been received from the occupants of number 41 The Green. The objection relates to the bulk dominance of the proposal and concern regarding the impact of a recently built wall along the shared boundary. Councillor Fox has expressed his support for the proposal, and it's he who requested the referral for determination by yourselves today. The Council's Conservation Officer has raised objection to the proposal, and officers share the concerns raised. Members will be aware that Sections 66 and 72 of the Listed Buildings and Conservation Areas Act require that special regard be paid to the desirability of preserving or enhancing special features of designated heritage assets. This is reinforced through local and national planning policies which attach great weight to this. The existing dwelling is already considered to be overly wide and disproportionate. It is of significant horizontal mass and is proportionally awkward. However, much of this earlier extension is screened from views within the conservation area by the properties to the front. The proposal has not been designed to appear subservient to the host dwelling and is considered to diminish the effect of the principal projecting bay of the existing dwelling, which the Conservation Officer considers is a key feature. By virtue of extending off the side of the front projecting gable with no setback, the proposal would create a further awkward linear arrangement. The proposal would be readily visible from the public realm and therefore the conservation area, and as such would, in the view of officers, cause unacceptable harm to its appearance and the setting of adjacent listed buildings. This harm would not be outweighed by any public benefit. Officers have made recommendations to the applicant in terms of design amendments which would address the harm identified. This would involve setting the principal elevation of the extension back by circa 400 to 500 mil with a small lean-to roof to the existing ground floor. This would result in a substantially less dominant feature and maintain the important feature of the design of the gable. Turning to other material planning considerations, officers are of the view that the relationship and layout of the proposal in relation to other neighbouring properties would ensure that no harm would result to their amenity through overbearing, overshadowing or overlooking impact. There would be no amendments to the on-site parking, which is considered adequate to meet the Council's adopted standards. Nonetheless, notwithstanding the policy compliance in those areas, officers believe that the overall harm to the conservation area and the setting of listed buildings is of such weight that the development is unacceptable. As such, our recommendation before you today is one of refusal for the specific reasons set out within the main committee report. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much, Louise. We have two speakers this afternoon. Firstly, Councillor John Fox. Councillor Fox, welcome to this afternoon's committee meeting. You have 10 minutes when you're ready to address committee.
Thank you, Chair. I'll keep it short and sweet. If you look at the front design, if you could put it on the screen, I'd appreciate it, of the house as it is at the moment. Is that possible?
Yeah, sure. That one?
Yeah, that one will do. That one's fine.
Okay.
If you look to the left, a bit of history. Originally, that extension to the left, the top part, wasn't there. As before my time as being the councillor of the Warrington ward, an extension was put in and it was agreed. That overlooks a lot of houses to the left as you face it. A lot more residents there who may or may not objected, I do not know. But what the applicant is trying to do is to the right is where the garage, I believe it's a garage or was a garage, it's now an extension. All he's trying to do is build it upwards to level it off. Now when you consider it's about 100 foot from the highway, I'm not sure how this has an instant thing with the Warrington Conservation Report and Management Plan, which I've got a copy here, and I don't see how people will even see it. I've been the ward councillor there for now 6 years. I didn't even know the house was there. You pass it and you don't notice it. So obviously you have to take in consideration of the neighbours, but I don't see how this is going to impact on the conservation area at all. It's too far set back, and that's all I have to say.
Thank you, Councillor Fox. Any questions, please, members at all? No? Councillor Fox, thank you very much. Mr Anton, please. Bottom at the bottom, right in the middle. That's it. Mr Anton, welcome to committee. You have 5 minutes when you're ready.
Thank you, Chair and Committee, for allowing me to speak today. I am Richard Anton, homeowner of 39 The Green. I'm here today because what I thought was going to be a simple extension job to build off the existing building line seems not to be correct in the eyes of someone else. This proposed extension, in my opinion, does not impact the properties which are at the bottom of the driveway. It is 35 metres long, the driveway, and it is 45 metres to the road. Who would want to take the advice to set the front of the proposed extension back 400 to 600 millimetres, creating a problem and expense to the project? In my opinion, this would make the property look ugly and look like a shop front, because where it has to be set back, you've then got to build a roof. And what you just said about the bay window aspect, looking at that picture now, if I had to build a small little roof above that window there, that would be the total view of coming up the driveway, not the bay windows. This house was built in 1950, and I actually delivered papers there when I was 14. The bay window frontage, but if the proposed extension needs to be set back, what I've just said is to create a small lean-to roof. Basically, I've been there now for 16 years, and we haven't got a bathroom upstairs. Because a little story that used to be owned by the coal merchants, and when Mr Peacock used to come in from his day's work covered in soot, Mrs Peacock used to shove him into the downstairs bathroom instead of him traipsing dust all over the house. So all I want to do is build a bathroom, yes, and continue just with a bedroom off that. I've lived in Warrington for 54 years, and I don't want to ruin the view of Warrington. I understand the conservation area totally, but this proposed extension is not impacting on that. Many thanks for allowing me to speak today.
Thank you, Mr Anton. Members, have any questions, please, for Mr Anton at all? No? Okay, thank you very much, sir.
Thank you.
Moving on then to questions for officers or legal officers. Councillor Hogg.
Thank you, Chair, through you. I just wanted to touch on the aspect of setting the extension back by 400 to 500 mil. Presumably that would then need some sort of structural beam to be put in place, but more importantly, how that would be achieved in terms of the step back. Would that be a sloped roof or a flat roof, or what was the kind of proposal?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Councillor Hogg, I would like to note, obviously, we've made reference to the request for amendments that officers made, but we must determine the application before you now. We suggested, it was the advice of the Conservation Officer, that the first floor element be set back. There would be a mono-pitched sloped roof going up from the ground floor to the first floor. It wouldn't be very deep. I'm not a structural engineer, I'm not a designer, I'm not a surveyor or an architect. I would imagine that yes, some sort of supporting lintel or beam would be required to hold up that first floor. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. I just wanted to just clarify in terms of what the alternatives were, that was all.
Councillor Sharp.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, two questions if I may. I'll deal with them one at a time, perhaps, if that's easier. So obviously I've noted the comments from the Conservation Officer, but I also note that Historic England, there was no comments back. I just wonder if you could elaborate on that? Is that something you would expect if there was a objection in a conservation area? Would you expect comments from Historic England or not?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. Historic England don't tend to comment on householder extensions, I'll be honest. They're very small scale in terms of what Historic England are concerned by. They are mainly concerned by brand new buildings within conservation areas, and they often defer to the expertise of the local conservation officer on such matters.
Okay, but is it fair to assume though that if they had a concern in terms of the impact on conservation, they would comment or not? Or you're saying they would just ignore it because it's a minor housing extension?
Through you, Chair, I can't answer that, I'm afraid, Councillor Sharp. I can't answer on behalf of Historic England.
Fair enough. And if a second question, if I may, Chair?
Of course.
I note in the report as well that there's a comment that the current proposal is harmful. It seems quite a strong word. I noted comments around the conservation area and potential impact, but harmful seems quite strong. Can you sort of elaborate on how you see it as harmful, please? Thank you.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. So the statutory duty under the Planning Listed Building and Conservation Areas Act is that all new development must preserve or enhance the special features of designated heritage assets. Where it does not do that, by definition, it is harmful to the character of the designated heritage asset. Under the provisions of the National Planning Policy Framework, and you'll forgive me, I can't remember exactly which paragraph, but the harm would be considered less than substantial. Substantial harm is generally when you're going to lose the heritage asset completely, so most harm is less than substantial. Under the provisions of the NPPF, we must then balance the public benefit and the public harm arising from the development and come to a view. So that's what officers have done. We're of the view that there is no public benefit arising from this extension. The benefit would be to the applicant, but that is not a public benefit, and therefore the harm we feel to the conservation area is a reason for which the application should be refused, but I appreciate members may reach a different conclusion.
Councillor Iqbal.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. On page 22, I think, it says that although the existing dwelling itself has no distinctive character or agricultural merit, based on that, the conservation officer still says that he's not happy with it. Why?
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I can't speak for the conservation officer. He's not here. I can speak for officers. I think the concern is the existing property is already overly wide. The proposal would make it even more so. The conservation officer considers that the front projecting gable is the key architectural feature of the property, and therefore it should remain as a standalone feature, and therefore any extensions to the property should be subservient so that double bay fronted gable remains the dominant feature.
Okay. Anybody else? No? Okay. Then we will go to debate. Who would like to kick that off? Councillor Hiller, I'll come to you.
Thank you, Chair, and through you. Interesting questions to the officer. I'm always fascinated when we're discussing and evaluating conservation area applications, because I live in one myself, and I'm particularly conscious of the sensitivity of conservation areas, and whenever possible, that sensitivity of the character of a conservation area should be preserved, it should be enhanced, and as Louise quite rightly says, the opposite of enhancement is harmful, and I think it's policy terminology, I think, rather than harmful in the normal sense of the word. Perhaps we would look at it as an adjective. Personally, I think, again, our officer, Louise, mentioned a glimpsed view, and I picked up on that. I think that as you drive past this property, walk past this property, it is a glimpsed view. You don't necessarily linger unless you're delivering newspapers or whatever. You don't linger, you don't look at it, you don't dwell upon it. And I feel that the harm to the Warrington Conservation Area is minimal, frankly, and and I get the impression that perhaps, and it's an impression, perhaps that the officer's recommendation is an on-balance recommendation rather than perhaps a strong demand for a refusal. So, Chair, I'm pretty ambivalent on this. I think that the harm is minimal. The reasons for the extension, pretty much neither here nor there from our point of view. Whether the bathroom is upstairs or downstairs or in the back garden is no concern of mine. The only objection we had was from the neighbour, and it wasn't actually on the actual physicality, I don't think, of the proposal. There are no windows, as I understand. There are no windows overlooking number 41, which we were told at the site visit. Again, it's one of those good examples where a site visit, I think, is absolutely critical to appreciate how this property sits. So I really don't have an issue with this, Chair, and I think I would be minded to go against the officer's recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Sharp.
Yes, thank you, Chair. Yeah, my earlier questions in relation to the conservation area was as much about learning as being from 2 points. One, this is the first conservation area issue that's come up while I sat on the planning committee, so I thank Councillor Hill for his input there, and also I didn't go on the site visit. My stand back from this, taking from the slides that presented of the view from the roadway with the existing frontage properties, it's almost to me that currently the flat roof and the garage extension to me is almost the dominating feature. Admittedly, it's a personal view, and I almost see this as a different way that it enhances the actual aspect of the property in terms of linking the two together, as opposed to making the flat roof what was used to be the garage and what looks to be an awkward shaped window. To me, that makes that the dominating feature as you get the glanced view. So for me, I'm not really hearing major objections and major impacts in terms of the conservation area, as I think the colleagues just stated. It's almost on balance, and from that perspective I think I would be mindful to go against the officers.
Thank you, Councillor Sharp. Anybody else? Councillor Hogg.
Thank you, Chair. Through you. Excuse me. So yeah, I'm not going to kind of say anything different than has already really been said. I think Councillor Hill is quite correct that it is only a glimpse as you walk past, drive past. It's not something that particularly as you approach the building and then as you're going away, it has a lingering view of that building, and I think that I'm always mindful of the fact that where maybe an applicant has decided to put an application that is where they've been advised to do something maybe a little bit different, and I want to have a look at what the reasons behind that, and I think that on this occasion I probably agree with them that actually having that kind of that little bit of roof would actually be more of a more ugly than what has been proposed. I think that what has been proposed maybe gives the building more balance, because you've got that extension off to one side, and that this sort of garage conversion looks a bit awkward on the building. I think that by making that a two-storey, that it will actually give the building a bit more prominence, and more in keeping with maybe other buildings in the area. So in terms of it being a substantial property. So yeah, I'm minded to go against officer's recommendation and to approve.
Thank you, Councillor Rush.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, I think when we visited the site, it was very difficult even to find the building when you drove by. Unless you was really actually looking at it, you wouldn't even notice that house existed down the driveway. Looking at the photo on the screen at the moment, I think a flat roof on the end there is out of character with the rest of the building that is now. And I think to to build it up and to put a pitch roof on would make it look even better. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Iqbal.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I appreciate the officers are doing their job. They have to balance everything together. It's very hard to go against officers' recommendation, but on this occasion I feel they got the balance wrong. On that basis, I'm minded to go against officers' recommendation. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hussain.
Yeah, I was just going to say from the site visit, it's very much what Councillor Hiller was saying as well. The one thing that I was concerned about was the extension's impact on the neighbouring property from the windows, etc., the views, and there wasn't any from what I could see looking back towards the road. The neighbouring properties, you know, the back end of those properties weren't in the line of sight, so I personally think it'd be an improvement, so I'm mindful again to go against officer recommendation on this one.
Thank you. Anybody else? Yeah, do you? Councillor Dowson.
Yeah, I think common sense says a flat roof like that appearance, anything would be an improvement upon it, and therefore I have to go against the officer's advice as well. I think what they're proposing is an improvement.
Thank you, Councillor Dowson. Anybody else? No. I think if I was to look from the officer's point of view, it was stated that the harm is less than substantial, but it's always weighed up against the public benefit, and quite rightly, as Louise said, there isn't any, effectively. So I can understand where officers are coming from, because there isn't any. But having said that, I can't disagree with what's been said, to be honest with you. I don't think it's very difficult to see. I think we've been there and done that, and with all due respect, to improve the look of that ground floor extension can't be a bad thing. So I'm minded to go against your decisions, I'm afraid, or your recommendation. Anyway, so anybody else want to go into debate on that? No. Okay. Did you want me to come back to you now, or do you want to do it? I'm just going to bring in Louise again, just to make sure that if there's any conditions that she wants putting into this, that you agree to them before you put a proposal. Is that okay? Yeah? Everybody all right with that? Louise?
Thank you, and through Chair. Obviously, listening to debate, I'd like to put forward some recommended conditions for members' consideration. Just four. So the first one would be the standard time condition from the Town and Country Planning Act. The second would be accordance with the approved plans. Third would be materials to match the host dwelling. And finally, members might note, Dan, if you wouldn't mind going back to the proposed elevations for me. There are two high-level windows on the side elevation. Next one.
Yeah.
Next one. That one. Unfortunately, we don't have the benefit of sections, so officers would usually recommend that those windows be obscurely glazed and non-opening unless openable above a height of 1.7 metres from floor level. Neither of those windows are primary windows to primary habitable rooms. Therefore, there wouldn't be any occupier amenity issues. Thank you, Chair.
I think that's quite sensible. Everybody okay? Okay, going on that then, I need a proposal. Councillor Hiller, please.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I might just pick up on Councillor Dowson's. I'm not sure that anything above a flat roof would be acceptable. I think that would need some mitigation potentially. Anyway, that aside, I make light of that, Chair, and I apologise for that. As I said, I don't have any. I certainly don't have the concern that our officers have. Let's put it that way. So I feel that in the round and on balance, I think this is an acceptable extension. I think the conditions that Louise has outlined are more than acceptable. I'm just a little bit nervous about matching materials because the porch isn't matching, and my aesthetic was upset slightly when I saw the porch. To me, that was not quite what it should be. So I think we would have to rely on our officers to consider what materials were being used rather than just have an arbitrary acceptance of matching materials, because I think that leaves it a little bit open. That said, Chair, I would propose that we go against the officer's recommendation on this
It's a unanimous decision, so the application is approved. Okay, thank you. Right, well that draws the meeting to an end, quite a short one. You lot couldn't cope last week. Anyway, thank you very much for all your time. Thank you, officers. Thanks everybody for coming along to the extra meeting, and take care of yourself. We'll see yourself next time.